Every fear that you have all boils down to fear of death, fear of public speaking, fear of falling, anxiety. Everything boils down to fear of death. And when you can make that connection and wrap your head around mortality, it truly impacts your health.
Our next guest, Dr. Kavin Mistry, is a board-certified neuroradiologist and longevity expert with over 20 years of experience understanding the human body and mind. He has a new book out, which is already an Amazon #1 bestseller. The book is titled Primal Health Design, 7 Key Paradigms to Reverse Biological Age.
Every time I open a CT of the head or MRI of the brain, I try to guess the person's age based on just the image. One of the shocking things I found out when I started radiology was that
Hi, my name is Chris Burris. I'm a longevity expert and the chief scientist at a lab focused on a longevity molecule. My primary focus is to help people live longer and better lives with science. Make sure to subscribe and share so you and your friends can live longer and better, so you and your friends can live beyond the norms.
Hi, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Beyond the Norms Health and Longevity Podcast. Our next guest, Dr. Kavin Mistry, is a board-certified neuroradiologist and longevity expert with over 20 years of experience understanding the human body and mind. He has a new book out, which is already an Amazon #1 bestseller. The book is titled Primal Health Design, 7 Key Paradigms to Reverse Biological Age. Dr. Mistry is here to share those 7 key paradigms. His mission is to help people reclaim vibrant health, purpose, and vitality by aligning modern living with timeless human biology, some could say with primal biology. Dr. Mistry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, Chris. Glad to be here.
So before we jump into your area of expertise and longevity and these paradigms, I like to go further back, like much further back. What was it like growing up, little Kavin? Where did you grow up? What were your parents like? If there was some event or someone you could pinpoint as the reason you would ultimately become a neuroradiologist, a longevity expert, an author, who or what would that be?
Great question, Chris. So my dad was with the United Nations. So growing up, we were all over the place. And so an interesting factoid, I have changed 21, almost 22 houses in my lifetime, which is incredible. And as I was going through it, it was sort of a negative because you have to move and make new friends all the time. However, looking back now, when you connect the dots, and it's in only retrospect you can connect the dots, it allowed me a chance to experience many diverse environments, and part of that was living close to 5+ years in Africa and East Africa, Tanzania. And his work involved working with the local tribes there. Particularly at that time, I didn't know they were the Hadza tribe. And I spent time with them, along with him, with the kids there, and spent a lot of time interacting with these tribes because I picked up the local language, Swahili, so I could actually communicate with these tribes. And, at that age, you pick up languages. So I was able to communicate with this tribe, and I learned so much. And at that time, not that I was thinking of writing a longevity book or anything like that, but then when I learned that this tribe came into prominence because of their low incidence of chronic diseases and everything like that, and I found out that this was the same tribe I hung out with, it kind of connected the dots, and it was fantastic. So this journey of being at many different places, including Africa and including interacting with these tribes, really gave me the background. And as I entered neuroradiology and my field, to connect the dots and say, here's modernity and everything we're doing in modern medicine, but here's a culture that is untouched and very primal, but they're doing something right because of all the low incidence of chronic diseases. And I was able to make that connect, and hence the book.
So we have a couple things in common, which is interesting, and it's kind of similar. My best friend in college, his dad was also in the UN, and he traveled. I think his dad worked in like 7 of the 10 most dangerous countries on the planet.
Okay.
I don't know if your dad was sent to the most dangerous ones. Hadza doesn't sound exactly like danger hotspot. But one of the aspects of moving, my dad was in the Air Force, we moved every 2 years, was that in every 2 years, there was only like three people I knew on the planet in that moment, right? It was my mom, my dad, and my brother. And it really kind of creates this tight knit. How was that family dynamic for you? And were you destined to get into medicine, or what did that look like?
I totally relate to you, Chris, in terms of becoming close to your inner circle, which was my parents. I didn't have a sibling
Mm.
until I was 10 years old. So during all that travel, I didn't have a sibling. So it was just three of us. Hence, I was very close to my parents. But at the same time, I developed skill sets to make friends and to communicate with people. And not only my age group, but also adults. So as a child, I became very good at communicating with adults and making friends with adults. And I think that skill set really helped me just overall in my career and now as an author.
Yeah, I think there's a phrase I love, which is the size of your success zone, however you may define success, is the size of your comfort zone. And growing up in this kind of transient lifestyle, like your comfort zone's bigger than a lot of people. I think that makes a big. Also, by the way, I didn't see Swahili on your resume, so I don't know if you need to add that back on there. That's actually super cool.
I will I wish it was as fluent as when I was 10 years old, and I think I've lost a lot of that, but I could probably capture much of it if I wanted to, but did not have too many opportunities after living Africa. Not too many people were speaking Swahili.
It didn't get you into any colleges, I imagine.
For sure.
So can you look back on that experience in Africa, in hindsight, clearly in the moment you're not aware, were there specific things that you lean on and kind of incorporated into your book as you look back?
Couple of aspects, Chris, is one is how connected that tribe and those tribal kids were to the land in
Mm.
terms of just being in the environment barefoot and enjoying the nature. And they were not dependent on digital distractions or technology driven toys or anything like that. The nature itself had enough of a wonder and enough of fascination for them. And and I loved it. We were chasing bugs, and I one of the interesting stories I share in the book is that one of the things the kids like to do was catch these grasshoppers. They would put them in tin cans, put some dry leaves, and like cook and the grasshoppers, I guess, like barbecue them and then eat them as a treat. And I could never, honestly, I could not never get to the stage where I could eat a grasshopper. It was just too much for me. And I would just kind of pretend I'd eat it and throw it away. But but things like that, they're so connected to their land, and we're finding that is so important for the gut microbiome and just exposure to the natural elements and all these aromatic compounds from the plants and everything like that. So all the research is backing up everything they're doing right, but they just do it instinctively, and it was beautiful.
That is very, very cool. So I take notes and I wrote down grasshoppers good for the gut microbiome. So we'll have that as a highlight. So saw a talk that you did 8 years ago. And in that talk, you were talking about knowing the age of somebody from their brain scan, but you also noticed that there were some people whose scans didn't match their chronological age. Talk a little bit about that. And I was just thinking, there's a lot of excitement right now about biological age testing. Is there any way to is that a potential biological age test?
So, Chris, every time I open a CT of the head or MRI of the brain, that's one thing I do. I try to guess the person's age based on just the image, and just to see if my baseline correlates with their age. And I would say that one of the shocking things I found out when I started radiology was that I would look at a scan, not even just the brain, but just the skeletal, let's say somebody's spine or somebody's brain, and I would see just advanced age, and where you would see a lot of atrophy in the brain, you would see a lot of degenerative disease in the spine, and the person would be only 40 or 50 years old. And the question I used to ask my senior residents and attendings, I said, why is this so? How come this guy looks like this and he's only like 40 years old or 50 years old? And the response I would get, just read the damn film,
Yeah.
don't worry about that, just do your job, stop asking these questions, and but that question always stayed. And as I dug deeper, what was fascinating beyond that, Chris, was that there were people who were 70 and 80 whose brain, when they came on the screen, looked like it was 40, okay, almost half their age. And so that really piqued my interest, and I said, wow, what is this 80-year-old doing right? Is it lifestyle? Is it genetics? Is it supplements he's taking? And then I would look into their histories, and so over time, all of this sort of research and just kind of like practice knowledge that I gained from just looking at a bunch of scans. And I mean, I would say in my life, in my time up till now, I probably looked at more than half a million scans, I would say.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it's a large number. Okay. And so that gives you, a lot of food for reflection and contemplation, and looking back and seeing trends. And overall, I found that there were 7 baskets that came into play, or 7 paradigms that I
Mm.
thought were important. Okay, and so it's been a fascinating journey.
Were there, so you actually have access to their medical charts, right? So you could kind of spot check. And did you kind of notice, was there any one that was such an outlier that you kind of stopped what you're doing and was like, I got to go meet this person? Were there any?
So those 80-year-olds, those few 80-year-olds, where it would be a double take, where I would look at their scan and go, this is amazing. I said, they had no atherosclerotic calcifications in their arteries. Their brain had the brain volume was phenomenal. And I would look, I'm like, okay, I know this guy's not smoking for sure. I'd say,
Yeah.
is he drinking? And then, because most patients give all the history in terms of the medication they're on, in terms of the supplements they're on, and everything like that. So, and we have access to the charts because we need that information to generate the report. So it is information that I'm allowed to review.
Yeah.
But I would just make a mental note, and it was fascinating. And so those cases are absolutely amazing to me. And so, yes, part of it has to do with genetics. Part of it has to do with all those factors that we cannot control. But I know for sure there were lifestyle factors that this 80-year-old was implementing that were key to for their brain to look like that.
So I was hoping you could tell me at this point that a glass of wine a day was one of the lead characteristics.
Unfortunately, that was not in the questionnaire. They didn't fill that out.
I'm just going to say paradigm number 8. So you can see these younger brains, and I kind of touched on this, but I want to come back and focus on a little bit. You said you would also know it in kind of their chest scans as well as their brain scans. Is there any opportunity to do this biological age testing from these scans?
From the brain MRI perspective, we are already doing some of that. So we do have AI algorithms and certain programs that actually will take the MRI data and will give us a sort of a brain age, but specifically age related to the centers of the brain that have to do with memory. So we use this for Alzheimer's testing. One of them is a product is known as NeuroQuant. And so for people who are having memory issues and are kind of at that stage where they have a high family history of Alzheimer's, that's something that is worth considering, because it's something relatively new, where it will tell you the thickness and the volume of your hippocampal formation, which is a part of your brain that has to do with memory and memory processing. So the scans will actually tell us that where your brain stands in terms of the overall population as far as age. So is your hippocampal formation aligned with your age, or is it atrophied
Mm.
so that it's much more advanced, and aged faster. So that's just the brain. But when we look at the body, we can look at atherosclerotic calcifications. We have actually AI programs. I actually personally got a coronary CTA done because of my family history of heart disease. And there is an AI algorithm that actually can look at calcified and non-calcified plaque in your heart, in your coronary arteries, and actually tell you where you stand in terms of your cardiovascular age. So
That's the Clearly scan, right? Is that the
that's the
one?
clearly scan. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I had one done also but keep going.
So, so cardiovascular age, and then I would say if we want to add a third layer to it, would be bone age in terms of bone
Mhm.
density and DEXA scan. And so this is just some of the three top ones. And I mean, there are other more nuances. So one that also I can think of is ultrasound guided imaging of the arterial walls, where we do intimal wall assessment using ultrasound. That also tells us the age of your vascular system. So when we compile all this, we get a better idea of your biological age from the imaging point of view.
Yeah, I'm really excited about, I think some people go into biological age testing and go, hey, it has me at 40. The current average lifespan is 82 or whatever the number is. And so that means I have 42 more years to live. And that's not exactly what it's saying. But the concept of using it to assess, is a glass of wine a day a good thing or a bad thing? Like, I think there's an immense amount of value in there. So we're talking about assessing biological age. Why do you think it is so important to assess biological age?
I think that one point you mentioned that it doesn't mean that your biological age is 40 and the average age of a person in the United States, let's say the lifespan is 77. You're like, okay, now I got this balance left. It's not from that perspective, but it is that if you, let's say, implement a lifestyle choice, and then
Mm.
let's say you decide to uh,
Maybe you
start.
implement a paradigm of yours that we're going to talk about. Yeah.
Absolutely. Or you enroll in the 21-day reset program that I'm working on, right?
Yes.
And then you say, hey, is this really helping my biological age? So, and for these patients with Alzheimer's, what happens is that they will start certain treatments and they will get a follow-up, and we will know that is the progression of their decline in that by their brain biological age, has that slowed down or has that halted because of this treatment. So when we implement these routines and rituals, these things will come into play and will tell us that what are they actually impacting you, apart from the subjective things like, oh, I feel like my energy is better, I'm sleeping better. And in the sleep, we have other, parameters we can check. But apart from that, this is really sort of more tangible, objective data that we can get from imaging.
And we've been talking about imaging. Are there other kind of markers, blood markers, urine, stool markers that you tend to kind of lean on for this
So
assessment?
from a biological perspective, there are inflammatory markers that I believe are important, such as ESR, CRP. We can check epigenetic markers that look into your DNA methylation. There's also ways to check mitochondrial function. There are lab tests that you can get. And lastly, I would say you can even have your telomere length assessed. That gives you an idea of, because that has been linked to longevity. Telomeres are those caps of your chromosomes, and the length, has been a lot of, there is correlation with that and longevity. And there's a lot of research on that. So again, these are also things I know in the book, I list about 10 factors that people can use as a checklist. I just named few that people can test, but I think that what's exciting is this model of biological age is very, very promising, because it then gives us a much more of a comprehensive framework to operate from and really assess somebody's health.
Yeah, it's almost like maybe we could, it's not going to happen, but we could stop calling it biological age and we could call it like biological health. And I know that there are some tests that are looking at individual systems, whether they be the cardiovascular system, maybe your renal, kidney system. Like, have you kind of played around with those and thought about incorporating those?
So I think in the next generation of testing that will come into play, one of the things that from an imaging point of view that is already being done, but that we are getting the AI tools up to par to assess this. So same way that I mentioned that we can assess somebody's brain age by using AI to calculate the volumes of the brain. There are full body MRI scans that people can get, and we are getting the AI software there where they can take a look at your whole body, not including the bones, your liver, spleen, and everything, and come up with this biological age or biological health model,
Yeah.
and hence that's why I say in the book I titled it the Primal Health Design, because that's what we're trying to design is this new model.
I do have to add, so this is interesting. I had a professor Mistry in college, studied mechanical
Okay.
engineering, and he was responsible for a design class. So like there was this, I was like, this is interesting how the world works together. So let's talk about why'd you decide to write Primal Health Design? Like what, so you're accumulating this information and then you start putting it all together. What was that kind of factor that caused you to write the book?
So initial curiosity led me towards sort of digging deeper in seeing that discrepancy, right? What are the discrepancy between the person's biological or brain age and their chronological age? And then as I dug deeper, what was fascinating, and this one concept that I tell people is this idea of epigenetic drift. And I don't know if you're familiar with that term or not, but one interesting study I came across was there was this one set of twins, and basically they were both they had a family history of dementia. So, which means, and they had kind of like that genetic predisposition to the dementia and kind of the very strong family history. So that they were destined in a way to develop a kind of early form of Alzheimer's, And what was interesting with the study, and I'm surprised they were able to follow these twins all the way through, but twin A did nothing to really change the course and just said, okay, well, I'm just going to accept this. This is genetics, and maybe, that's my bad luck, and then just kind of went that course. And twin B really said, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to dig up all the research. I'm going to see what I can do to really change the lifestyle in terms of diet, in terms of activity, in terms of all these things. And it was interesting is twin A was then clinically diagnosed with Alzheimer's around 62. Twin B was clinically diagnosed around 83. And so if you look at that same genetic information, same genome in a sense, but all we changed is the factors that impact the epigenetics, which is the gene expression. And hence that difference between the two is the epigenetic drift we talk about. So think about that. In a person who is genetically destined to have Alzheimer's, if we can have that degree of discrepancy, that
20
degree
years,
of
right? Is my
right,
math right?
20 years, roughly 20 years of epigenetic drift, what can you do with a person who doesn't have that history and decides, I'm going to implement these factors? What can we do with our health? And I tell people that what excited me is that when I saw that, I said, what are the switches that we can pop on? What are the switches that we can turn on? And hence I landed on these 7 master switches that people can turn on. And I tell people that you are in the cockpit of your genome. Okay, you are really in the cockpit of your genome when you think about this concept of epigenetics. And you can decide how many of these positive switches you want to flip on.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting because I don't know if you've done this assessment to look at that twin B. How many of the paradigms were they implementing? You may not even have access to that, but that would actually be, it turns out they were on all of them. That would be very cool. So the book is published. It's a Amazon #1 bestseller. Congratulations for that. That's always an amazing accomplishment. Is there any feedback that you've been getting about the book since you've published it that you would say is the most meaningful?
The most meaningful feedback, Chris, that I get is I think when people pick up a health book, they're expecting a lot of scientific research dump, in terms of a health book, and that intimidates people because I think people get inundated with so much information that they don't know what to do. And one of the things I always said, and that's why the book is titled Primal Health Design, and the word design, first of all, my last name, Mistry, as you said about your professor, Mistry means a woodworker. So I come from a lineage of designers, okay?
Mm.
And so that part is still within me. So I said, let's take all this data, let's take all this science, and just give people clear instructions. So at the end of each chapter, I have very clear instructions that tomorrow morning, what do you want to do? And here are things that you can implement tomorrow morning, okay, after reading chapter 1. And with all the 7 paradigms, I give that. And I think that resonates with people a lot. And that's the feedback that I get is that, we were scared to read this book, but after reading even the first chapter, I had something to do the next day, which was exciting, that I could implement it right away. I didn't need to finish the whole book, And so I find that promising, and I like that type of input.
Yeah. When you can break it down and make it really simple, and like go do this, that's awesome. Yeah, I would be thrilled with that feedback as well.
Hey, super quick break from the podcast. Hopefully you're loving it. This is a way you can support the podcast and take advantage of a great offer. We're offering 50% off of one of our MCT bottles. MCT is an amazing oil. Add the ESS 60 molecule to it. It's even more amazing. All you got to do is leave a review on iTunes, send us a notification that you've left that review. We'll get you a coupon code that'll get you 50% off of our MCT oil and free shipping. Back to the podcast.
So, all right, let's talk about the 7 paradigms. We'll talk about why they're essential for reversing biology, but let's list them first. What are the 7 paradigms? And remember, the 8th is wine no.
Oh, absolutely. Wine and cheese. Okay, we'll go back there. So again, many layers to it, but to put it in a framework that people can understand very, very easily is that I like to see health from a inside out perspective. And I think that you need to build your foundation and then add other layers of health. And that's why these 7 paradigms are in place. Paradigms 1, 2, and 3 is connecting with earth, body, and food, which is in terms of aligning with the circadian rhythm, in terms of your primal alignment of your body, in terms of conscious eating, and just giving you kind of like tip of the iceberg of this. Those 3 paradigms comprise the physical health aspect of us, okay? We go one layer out, which is paradigm 4, which is the mind-body connection, and that truly touches upon how do we develop that clarity and focus and go away from digital distractions and develop that mental health that is required. So we go from physical health to mental health. And I believe that the current physical fitness industry and sort of the medical model usually stops at those 2 layers. They kind of focus on the physical health. That's where the whole physical fitness industry is focused on. And then now more and more people are talking about mental health, which is also an important piece. But from my research and all the time with the Hadza and everything, I found out that there were actually 2 more layers that are so important that I think get ignored. And when we look at the research from Blue Zones and all these other parts of the world where people have that longevity, we see that the 3rd layer of emotional health, which is paradigms 6 and 7, which is connecting with our purpose and connecting with our tribe. all that
Mm.
research really comes into play that when people kind of find their ikigai or their reason for being and develop that connection with a tribe that has as much to do with longevity as all those first two factors. But that if you don't have that base of physical and mental health, you really cannot dive into that whole third category of emotional health,
Mm.
where we connect with purpose and tribe. And I would say, and then the last layer, which I don't think not too many doctors touch upon, and which I found that to me was the most important one. It was something that I could only write after I lost both my parents, and I kind of had to
Mm.
wrap my head around that fact. And is that the idea of the seventh paradigm is connection with our mortality and the idea of
Mm.
existential health. And what I tell people is that all fears, if you look at that, every fear that you have, all boils down to fear of death. If you talk about fear of public speaking, fear of falling, everything, anxiety, everything boils down to fear of death. And when you can make that connection and wrap your head around mortality, you see that chronic stress, which we know that chronic stress is associated with chronically elevated levels of cortisol, decreased telomere length, decreased longevity, and whatnot. A lot of research on that. But when you can wrap your head around that seventh paradigm, it truly impacts your health because now you make friends with that concept of mortality.
I think that's really powerful, and I'm going to draw an analogy that may because I think your phrase for that is cosmos, right? Like this connection
Yeah.
with cosmos
Mhm.
and mortality. And there's a business influencer named Alex Hormozy. I don't know if he's
Sure.
just
Yes.
blown up, right? Like he's
Well
amazing.
aware. Yeah.
And one of the things that he talks about is like if you're struggling making a decision, or if you're struggling thinking about, what are people going to think of me when I maybe fail at a business task or whatever, and then he goes like, in 50,000 years, nobody will know who you are. Like there are people who were the richest, almost the richest people on the planet 50,000 years ago, and we don't know their names. Like there may be a building that's rubble now. So when you have that perspective, is that where you're coming from in this concept?
And I think that we sometimes make too much of ourselves in our daily thought process. And but even beyond that, I think this last paradigm raises a important paradox. And this is the paradox that I uncovered, is that when, because we're so afraid to die, we have this mental construct that we fool ourselves that we have endless tomorrows, right? We don't want to face death, and we kind of have this thing that, oh, death happens to other people. It really doesn't happen to me because I just don't want to face my own mortality. And when you think you have an infinite life, you play a finite game. You talk about win lose. You talk about, that's when you'll doom scroll. That's when you'll go binge watching on Netflix. But when you understand that you have a finite life, then you have a infinite mindset. And there is the paradox, right? When you have a finite life, you focus on infinite things. That's when you wake up and you say, what am I going to leave behind in the short time I have? What is the impact am I going to make? How many people are better off because I lived? And that focus for me, when it clicked, it just changed everything. I think it changed my whole life because it was such a unique shift in my
Mm.
mindset. And, my resting heart rate dropped. So many things in my life changed just from changing that paradigm.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you mentioned ikigai earlier. Talk a little bit about that. And there's probably some other, extremely famous Chinese or Japanese proverb that talks about that shift. But what is ikigai again for the audience?
So ikigai it's a Japanese term that addresses the crossover of four elements. Something that you're good at, something that you like to do, something that other people value, and that the fourth is that you can get paid for. So a crossover of all those things can give you your ikigai, and it's something that you can do forever because it will provide you the financial sustenance as well as you love to do it and you're good at it and people respect you for it. And it's something that, when I talk to adolescents and teens, and I say that, you got to put this graphic of ikigai on the board, and you got to think about this and try to arrive at this, because it will take some time to uncover that ikigai, because everybody's ikigai is a little different. But when you do uncover it, okay, what I believe that it gives people is a important biological hack is the idea of alignment. And when you're living your life according to your ikigai, your actions are in alignment with what you love to do, what you're good at, and what other people respect and you can get paid for, there is no resistance, because now you enjoy, every day becomes a vacation. But what I see today is people doing activities, pursuing goals that are against that model. And then there is that misalignment between what they're really good at and what they love to do. Instead, they're doing things that maybe they don't like to do, and maybe they're not even good at it, So I feel that people living in misalignment is also a key factor for as a negative against longevity and overall health.
Yeah, there's a parallel, related to our product. There's a longevity study, a 90% extension of life, and I'll share that with some people. And it's surprising to me the number of people who are like, well, why would I want to live longer? Like, let alone 90% longer. But, there is this lack of separation. I think first, it's the lack of separation of living longer from living in some sort of state of infirmment, right? Like, so that's a big factor. But even for some, when you take that away, and change the question. And you're like, Dr. Mistry, if you had the same mental capacity that you have today and the same physical capacity, would you then be interested in living longer? There's still a small fraction who the answer is no, right? Like they just, and I think they haven't found that ikigai. I would agree that's very important. So first three: physical, earth, body, food. When you talk about earth, like talk a little bit about what you mean related to earth.
Sure. I mean, there are many layers to this, but I would say the top two is one is connecting with the earth in terms of grounding and the microbiome and having contact with soil. We're finding that, when I was in Africa and we were just out there in nature, dust blowing and playing in the in the dirt and like chasing grasshoppers, and we're inhaling all these microbes and everything like that. And we're finding that when kids grow up in that environment, they have such a diverse gut microbiome that when they become adults, they have very low incidence of allergies and very low and very high immunity, and it all came from them playing in the dirt. And so one of the questions I'll ask my audience when I give a speech is that, when was the last time you touched dirt? When was the last time you were actually touched soil? And it shocks me at the for the gardeners in the room, they will all raise their hand. They're all like, yeah, of course, But for people, who have more of a office job, it's shocking how little contact we have with earth, and which is the source of your gut microbiome and your gut microbiome diversity. So it's such an obvious fix, but we're so disconnected from it, And then the second aspect of connecting with earth is connecting with the circadian rhythm. And we know that the way the sun rises and sets is also, there is a biological clock within you that is following that same pattern. Your hormones follow the circadian rhythm. Your digestive juices follow the circadian rhythm. And there are many other genetic things that happen that also follow the circadian rhythm. And if you're in misalignment with that, and you're not connected with that rhythm, then your health suffers.
So a couple things. This weekend, I was actually on Monday, I put my feet in the sand. We actually went down. Galveston is not a very attractive beach, but it is, in fact, a beach. So got my feet in the sand. I recently interviewed Dr. Gundry in his latest book, The Gut-Brain Paradox. He talks about how you need to have some dirt, right? He's talking like
Yeah.
he remembers pulling, carrots out of the ground and like barely dusting them off. I'm assuming that when you were eating, or your friends were eating grasshoppers, they didn't spend much time
Oh,
dusting them off. They just
absolutely not. Yes,
they,
absolutely
they
not.
they just ate them, yeah, circadian rhythm makes a whole lot of sense. Anything in food, like what do you talk about when you're talking about food and its impact on really on longevity?
So I would say food, the top two things, and there are many layers to this. The top two things are, we know that what you put in your mouth has a direct impact on your mitochondrial health.
Mm.
And your mitochondria rely on certain food factors, and many compounds that come in greens, and many other food factors have a direct correlation with your mitochondrial health. That's one aspect of it. And the second aspect of it is our body has more microbial cells than human cells. We know that, and I'm sure Dr. Gundry touched upon that, and because he's big on that. So you're not eating to feed you. You're actually you're feeding that gut microbiome, because there are more of them than you.
Way more,
You're
yeah.
So when you realize that, then you optimize. In yogic term, it is a term called sattvic food. Sattvic meaning life promoting food. Okay, versus life depleting food. And that term, and you look at what they define as sattvic food, is all these foods that actually improve your gut microbiome and improve your mitochondrial health. So I think those two elements are something that plays a role in this conscious eating, that when you put something in your mouth, you got to think that, is this life promoting or life depleting?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We touched on ikigai, right? You kind of put that in the third spot. Mindfulness was kind of second category. Community and cause, I think you mentioned, and then the mind-body connection. What are some couple things people could do to maybe improve both of those?
That's a huge topic, but from if we were to touch upon it, I would say in this day and age, digital distraction is such a big issue, and not only for teens, I would say adults too. How many times do you get a text message? And for me, I can't even ignore it, because it's usually
Yeah, yeah, it's job related. Yeah.
some X-ray tech or other doc, or some patient related issue. I just cannot. I have to take it. And neuroscience research, from the idea of neuroplasticity and everything, says that it takes at least 20 minutes of focused attention to enter a space where you can experience flow and stillness, and have that focused attention. And when you look at that, and I look at the statistics, the average person gets about 150 to 180 messages or notifications a day. And that means that our modern lifestyle has, essentially, we have programmed distraction and removed focus
Yeah.
out of our life, because you never get a chance to really enter deep work or flow. And so this idea is that you have to be very intentional and carve out space where you could shut everything off and have focused attention. And I tell people, start slow, maybe a few minutes, but then develop a practice where you can develop that stillness and focus, because we know that the impact of that on your health, and the impact on that on how you interact with people, your reactivity and everything, your ability to focus, your ability to remember things, everything changes when you have that stillness practice.
And is that stillness practice often means meditation? Are there kind of other opportunities that you would maybe share?
So, Chris, I avoid the word meditation because as soon as you say meditation, people go, "Oh, I can't meditate,"
Yeah.
and because people are scared of it. People are scared of the term, and for obvious reasons. And actually, when you talk to traditional Eastern yoga practitioners, they laugh at the term meditation because in India, meditation is divided into 8 different levels and 8 different types of meditation. There are many different terms for that. So I usually say focused attention because people can relate to that. And that I think that if we can focus on something that is happening in the present, whether it's your breath or flame or something that is in front of you, maybe water flowing, that is like that, then you can develop attention. And when you can go from anxiety to attention, eventually you'll go from attention to what I call is awareness. And that progression from anxiety to attention to awareness, I think it's a journey everybody should learn to take because at the end of that, you start developing all these benefits that come with it, which is increased focus, increased memory, and really you can dive deeper into that stillness practice.
Yeah, and become increased awareness. I love the phrase, you should be meditating 10 minutes a day. And if you are too busy to meditate 10 minutes a day, you should meditate for 20.
Right. It's interesting. The other one I like, Chris, is the research says that when you meditate 20 minutes, it's not you're not meditating for the calmness that you experience in those 20 minutes, but you meditate for the 23 hours and 40 minutes that it impacts because your cortisol level and everything, your reactivity and everything changes in those 23 hours and 40 minutes.
I think there's really some amazing work. I interviewed Dr. Imo Patel, which you may have alluded to the mitochondrial test with MeScreen, and his work with Joe Dispenza, like collecting data on going into the Joe Dispenza's kind of meditation events. I think we're just going to continue to get amazing data.
It's absolutely fascinating, absolutely fascinating, and I just like to make the topic approachable for people. And at the entry level, I think I like to just make it simple and just call it focused attention and let people at least experience it. And then I know when they latch onto it, then they can pursue it deeper.
And I knew it was important because you actually have I think a 10-minute meditation, well, focused attention at the beginning, like on your homepage. Like it is very much front end.
I did it at a event once, and people said, we like that. We felt like in those 10 minutes, we did hit upon something. And then the request came, can you record something and then put it out there? And so that's what I did.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So it's on YouTube, and if anybody wants to go and check it out, it's a great track. Yeah.
Excellent. And we'll give links as we get closer to the end. So we've touched on some of these, but let's kind of consolidate. What are some simple changes you would recommend people make to feel younger, stronger, more purposeful?
So in the morning, I would say how you start your day and end your day is very, very important. I call it like your bookends of life, right? But if we're starting the day, and I would say that if you engage at least 3 or 4 of these paradigms, it will drastically impact your day. And so the first aspect is when we say connecting with the earth, can you have a 2 minutes of grounding? Can you step out on the lawn and get some sun? Because one, it will align your circadian rhythm. It will give you the grounding, which has the electrochemical benefits, the microbiome benefit. The second aspect is connecting with your body is that that all day when you sit on a computer, your shoulders roll in, your neck goes into that forward head posture and everything like that. So you lose that alignment. So here's your chance in the morning to set that alignment. And one of the things I like to do, and that's worked for a lot of people, is just doing a static hang. I feel that if you have a bar and you just do a static hang for 30 seconds, it really engages the muscles of your back. And actually, over time, when that strength builds, you will have less of that rounding of your shoulders anteriorly. Okay, and it also will impact your forward head posture a little bit. Okay, and then the third thing I would say in the morning, that even if you can spend 5 minutes on this focused attention that we just talked about, it will change your level of cortisol levels throughout the day. Okay, even 5-10 minutes will impact it. Ultimately, we want to get to that 20-minute mark where neuroscience says that that's when people will start experiencing that flow state.
Yeah, I love that. I think I saw can't remember his name right now. Super famous guy. It'll come. Dr. Huberman talk about getting to something like 7.5 minutes one time actually has a dramatic. Are you familiar with that research or that kind of particular?
So that's
Yeah.
along the same lines where we're trying to see that at what point, because there is a discrete flip between that anxious state to a state of focused attention, and then from there to that state of awareness. And awareness is it's where you have that clarity, where you feel presence, where you're in that present moment, in the now, and everything like that. And there's been a lot of efforts to quantify this and say at what time interval do people really flip into those different phases. And so that 7.5 minutes is probably coming from a lot of that research.
Was it set? I'm gonna have to go double check because part of me is like 21 minutes, but you said 20, so we'll
But
go
but
with
I, I,
7.
I from entering the flow, I know that it is around 20 minutes, and that experiencing that presence. Yes.
And that can be tough, right? And one of the things that I'm going to share, because I really like the concept that comes from this is, hey, if the concept of doing 7.5 minutes stops you from stops you from sitting down, back it down to 5, right? If the concept of 5, back it down to 2, just get the habit first, and then don't even worry about expanding it. Maybe that happens, but the habit is actually the very important thing. And if it's like, okay, I'm going to sit down for 2 minutes before I walk out the door, I'm going to be quiet. Maybe you expand it, maybe you don't, but make sure you do it. That's, I think, significantly more important. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Chris, I would add to that when we talk about that habit, James Clear talks about it a lot in Atomic Habits, right? And he says that it's kind of like you're carving out this groove, right? And when you look at neuroplasticity and wiring your brain, even if you sat for 2 minutes today, you started, right? You started etching out that groove. So that next day, tomorrow, there will be some uh, residual from yesterday. Now it's easier to kind of fall into that, and it builds. So you can go from 2 minutes to 3 minutes, and then ultimately to 5, 10, and 20. But the fact that you sat down today for 2 was a beginning, and I think that's the important part of the process.
Yeah, and then you get that groove. So we talked kind of morning. Maybe give a couple things, and then we'll get to our wrap up questions because this time has flown by really quickly.
So we talk about the morning habits.
Yeah, you've got those already. Maybe
Yeah.
do you have some evening habits that we can
Yeah,
touch on?
so evening habits, absolutely. We know that along with these connections with the circadian rhythm and earth and everything we talked about, the evening bookend is just as important because we want to enter sleep appropriately. We want to
Mm.
optimize ourselves for sleep. And I think sleep is one of the best kept secrets, I would say. And it's probably one of those things that has significantly improved my life and lifestyle and everything like that. Because when I really started tracking the quality of sleep, not quantity, but quality, I really started uncovering things. And when I started optimizing my quality and based on avoiding blue light in the evening, okay, having the last hour where I have some downtime and I'm doing activities that lower my cortisol and allow my melatonin to rise. And all of these things come into play at giving us that restful sleep. Okay. So in the evening, it is all about optimizing sleep because we know in sleep, the first half is all about detox and the second half is all about memory consolidation, putting it very simply. But from a longevity point of view, there is no better hack than having a quality sleep.
Yeah, I think I'd like to call it the most healing and restorative medicine that you could ever have. And I do use the phrase "it's often free," and somebody was like, "Well, why is it often free?" Well, it's like some people have jobs, like some people don't even have the luxury to get a proper night's sleep, and so yeah, it's often free. All right, this has been fantastic. Let's get into our wrap up questions. Dr. Mistry, do you have a target age that you want to live to?
So I believe instead of lifespan, I tend to focus more on health span for sure. But from an Indian yogic perspective, I think they divide the life into 12-year cycles. And then they said when you go through 7 cycles of that, which is getting to 84, it's a complete life. And there is some logic to it, and there is some yogic aspect to it. But I would say for me, it's not about the number, but it's about really the vitality and the quality of being able to do the things I want to do that is more important.
Excellent. And is 84 a reasonable number for me to write down for you?
So I would say 84 would be the minimum,
Okay.
right? And everything beyond that is gravy.
Excellent. And how long do you think humans can live?
So I know the latest research is saying, based on everything that is happening right now, that 120 to 130 is a good range where we should be able to get to that, right? The question is that when we are able to push that longevity and lifespan, is our health span going to keep up with that lifespan? That is the more crucial question, right? Um, is our our mental faculties and everything we talked about in terms of biological age, are they going to keep up with that chronological age?
Yeah, because that's what's the point. So I jotted down 125 there. What 2 to 3 protocols, habits, mindsets, let's call them shortcuts, because everybody likes shortcuts, to longevity and a long health span would you share?
So a couple of them we already touched upon, is
That's
that,
fine. Yeah.
and I would say that the connection with Earth, in terms of, we talked about soil connection, spinal alignment, and the last one I would say is a stillness practice. To me, that can be transformative, and it's very, very easily accessible.
Excellent. Connection with Earth, spinal alignment, and then the stillness practice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Do you think maybe there's 1 or 2 things people get absolutely wrong regarding longevity and a long health span?
Chris, what I see often is that people tend to go after certain hacks and say that, okay, this supplement is going to cure everything, or this treatment is going to cure everything. And when we talk about, let's say, stem cells, or we talk about red light therapy, and they'll chase that treatment or they'll chase that supplement, but without having a proper foundation. And that's why we talked about those layers of health, right? Without having that proper foundation, just implementing that particular supplement or that particular hack is not going to help you. So I would say that even though those things may have some validity, it will be even more powerful if your base is very strong.
Yeah, maybe the summary is doing things out of order, right? Like hopping, or just skipping some of the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Dr. Mistry, how can people contact you? And I know you have like a strategic AM download, so talk a little bit about that, and a 21-day primal reset that's about to launch.
Sure. So the book website has a lot of links on there, including my socials on there. So I would say that in the book link is primalhealthdesign.com. And there is a free download, and it's a question that I get asked a lot. What's the optimal AM routine? So I just created a really nice PDF that people can go in and download, and it's available for free. So if you go to primalhealthdesign.com, you'll see the download for the AM habits. There's also a section there, which is a course that I just developed, which is a 21-day Primal Health Reset course, which dives deeper into all 7 paradigms and how to implement that into your life. And it's kind of like a one-on-one session with me for 21 days. And they're short sessions. And then beyond that, on LinkedIn, I have a blog, which is the Aligned Life article blog, which people can sign up for. And every 2 weeks, I put out some content from the latest research in longevity and everything like that.
And on social, I've seen some of your social stuff. What's your handle there?
Right. So it's a Kavin Mistry, MD. It's on Instagram. It's on LinkedIn, and all the other. So on YouTube as well.
Okay, excellent. And what in the near future are you excited about?
So I'm very excited about the course coming out. I think it will be transformative for people because it's sort of like a one-on-one dive with me, and I'm excited about creating that community so we can have more of these conversations. And looking forward to meeting great people like you, Chris.
Dr. Mistry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, Chris.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Live Beyond the Norms podcast. Make sure to subscribe and follow. Also, make sure not to be that guy, the guy sharing this podcast with people who are not interested in living beyond the norms. If you would like to learn more about the ESS60 molecule, the molecule responsible for the single longest longevity experimental result on mammals in history, a full 90% extension of life, visit myvitalc.com. That's myvitalc as in carbon.com.